Season 1 of Andor dares to ask the question, why would a guy like Cassian Andor ever join a rebellion? As a matter of fact, why would any of us? For the most part, Cassian Andor is just a guy like most people, just like most of us, handling his own personal business, dealing with old girlfriends, a few debts he has to pay off, not looking for trouble, but if trouble comes, he can deal with it, right?
I'm just a simple man trying to make my way in the universe.
Just a simple man making his way through the galaxy. So how does someone like this end up sacrificing all of that to go up against an enormous beast of an empire in a seemingly unwinnable war? That's what Andor sets out to explain, and it's the best Star Wars since the original trilogy. This isn't a story necessarily about a character. This is a story about rebellion as seen through the experiences of a character, and why that character would join a rebellion, what would bring this person to the point where he would utter the words,
Kill me. Or take me in.
because the rebellion is all he has left. You know, spoilers, by the way, dead mother, home has been destroyed, friends dead or tortured into a state of lifelessness, and some Star Wars fans call this boring. Now, I can appreciate the storytelling they're going for, I really can. They're looking for the adventure, the excitement, and the thrills. That's what Star Wars has always been. You know, cliffhangers within each episode. How are they going to get out of this fix? Everything is resolved by episode's end with a nice thrilling swell of Star Wars-y music. I love that Star Wars just as much as the next fan, okay? But there are different types of Star Wars content. The original trilogy, the prequels, the Clone Wars, the sequels, some good, some not so good, some downright awful. But this is a Star Wars series that's a little different, and it's probably going to be for those who enjoy reading books. Now, I don't mean that negatively, okay? Just because you don't like reading books doesn't mean you shouldn't be able to enjoy this series. What I mean is people that have a love for reading and go to reading for a lot of their entertainment, they're frankly going to enjoy what they get out of Andor. The build up, the pacing, carefully plotted structure of the narrative, the payoffs that come not at the end of an episode, but at the end of a 3-episode arc, the effort put into the characters, the world building, the story itself, really from the very first episode, it all comes together beautifully in episode 12, where again, those last words, kill me or take me in, could not have been thought of or even uttered by this character of Cassian Andor in episode 1. Book readers are going to appreciate that, I think, and really enjoy what they're getting out of that. The show probably could have easily been called Rebellion, and maybe that would have explained it more concisely. But it's the boots on the ground Star Wars that a lot of folks have been looking for. That's not necessarily about Jedi or Sith or bounty hunters or the Skywalker family, and it absolutely feels like it has a place within the Star Wars canon. You know, we finally got an adult Star Wars story, not just fan service, not just a bunch of callbacks and cameos, not a bunch of cool things to look at with no real purpose other than just to be cool to look at. And don't get me wrong, I believe fan service, callbacks, cameos, and cool stuff all has a place in Star Wars. That stuff belongs to Star Wars just as much as Andor does. But I think everything we got in Andor belonged in Star Wars as well. And we still got cool things to look at. We got a lot of cool things to look at. I actually won a Fondor Hallcraft for my own collection. For me, it goes back when I was a 7-year-old kid watching Empire Strikes Back. The best part of the film for me was not the attack on Hoth at the beginning, not the escape through the asteroid field, or even the Luke Vader showdown at the end. It was Luke's training. It was Yoda. Yoda still remains my favorite character after all these years. It's the speech he gave Luke when explaining the nature of the Force.
Size matters not. Look at me. Judge me by my size, do you? And where you should not. For my ally is the Force. And a powerful ally it is.
Maybe it was because I was a little kid with 2 bigger brothers that speech hit me, but honestly, it was the speech that made me a Star Wars lifer. More so than the lightsabers, although I do like lightsabers and all that. Because it was inspirational, even today it inspires without being overly preachy. It belonged in the Star Wars just as much as the sabers and the space battles. It's what, for me, made Star Wars more than just a sci-fi show. And I personally haven't gotten anything like that since Empire until Andor. There are tons of great monologues and speeches. The dialogue and the acting in Andor are absolutely superb. And this is an era where Star Wars has gotten extraordinarily messy. These last 5 years in particular, probably the worst era for this franchise. I no longer think this is disputable, although the sad part is Andor being good won't necessarily fix the problems within Lucasfilm unless they commit to bringing on more stories similar to this. I personally would give Tony Gilroy his own trilogy. I would give him the next important Star Wars project at this point. Because unfortunately, Andor feels like a one-off. It's like something we're never going to get again in this Star Wars franchise, and that's a damn shame. Grounded realism has a place in Star Wars. Now, it doesn't necessarily need to dominate the content, the films, the comics, the cartoons, the TV series, but it has a place, and the folks at Lucasfilm will be wise to understand that. In terms of the story itself, Andor is a simple story. Luthen Rael, a rebellion leader, recruits a mercenary for a heist, either expecting him to die along the way or he'll just kill him afterwards. Cassian Andor, through his experiences of being recruited, completing the heist, laying low afterwards, getting arrested by the Empire, ending up in prison, escaping the prison, finally joins up with the rebellion after his mother dies. Now, that's the simple nuts and bolts of the main thrust of the series, but Andor is anything and everything except that story. We see the day-to-day life of citizens living under an impressive empire, from a small corporate-ran blue-collar town to the capital of the galaxy in Coruscant, to the interior of a rebel cell, to the inside of an imperial prison, and all the characters that make up these locales. Tony Gilroy doesn't just give us a 30,000-foot overview of the ideals that spark rebellion. We hear them spoken from the lips of the rebels who birthed the rebellion. We see them expressed. We see them lived out. From the planning of the heist, to their arguments about tactics, to their fears, to their fights, and even to their deaths. And they didn't start off with a fleet of X-Wings. They started out with 6 months living as shepherds so they can stake out a single Imperial garrison for a chance to steal some money and make an announcement to the Empire. We see the toll that a rebellion takes on a lone wolf operating out of the shadows. Kino Loy leading a prison break, even though he can't swim to safety and save himself. And opposite this, we have the well-oiled bureaucratic machine of the Empire showing the ever-tightening grip they are placing on star systems as the rebellion is gaining more strength and more recruits. The overly ambitious fanatic who believes in the law and order of the Empire, attempting to crack into the Imperial system. He's smart and intuitive, but also a damn nuisance. The ISB career woman climbing through the corporate ladder, getting her hand slapped at first, but gaining some victories for her career along the way, but also realizing that as competent as she is, she might be too ambitious and in over her head. These aren't just mustache-twirling baddies, but people that believe in their cause as much as the rebels. We get a small glimpse at an Imperial officer and his family just trying to get out of this dead-end corner of the galaxy and into something more suitable for them. It's an actual filled-in, lived-in world that feels like something we know. The course of the story moves through 3 major arcs, Ferrix, Aldhani, and Narkina 5, and then the final showdown on Rick's Road, while filling in details in the goings-on in Coruscant with the ISB, Luthen, and Mon Mothma. Each arc pushes Cassian Andor, and then by proxy pushes us into the rebellion, where at the end we should be ready to enlist. Now, Cassian Andor isn't the most compelling character in this show, not by a long shot. So what's his purpose? Why is this show called Andor and not Luthen or Mothma? Well, this story needed a POV character for the audience, and he's basically our avatar. We're the protagonist, the uncommitted, self-seeking citizen, seeing if we're going to enlist in this insane rebellion or just get our money and keep our heads down. Walking through the various phases of the rebellion and the Empire, we see the value of fighting for independence and liberty, and then what happens if you don't. Gilroy in Andor treats the audience like grown-ups. Gave us rich, well-developed characters, great world building, and a deep look at the inner workings of not just the Empire, but the rebellion. And he topped it all off with amazing acting and suspenseful storytelling without spoon-feeding the audience the story or relying on fan service and member berries. Andor doesn't just drop characters into our laps and expects us to care about them because they have important names or histories. Andor builds every character. Every moment, every side glance, every nod, every moment of quiet contemplation, every word of dialogue has meaning and importance. The ISB security briefings and meetings are some of the best moments in the series, and it's just people talking to each other. We get to witness these verbal sparring matches by career-climbing Imperial officers as they step over one another and ingratiate themselves before their superiors, and it's absolutely wonderful, delicious writing.
Thesis, please.
They are competent, highly intelligent, highly ambitious. It's the Empire as sometimes we've never seen. And let me say this, that Dedra Meero is no Mary Sue Femboss. She's put in her place on several occasions and needs to prove herself to her peers and superiors and the audience. In the final episode, she's clearly unprepared and is nearly killed by simply underestimating the situation that she finds herself in, something that she's been doing the entire season, if you pay attention. Don't get me wrong, she has her moments, but she didn't have her finger fully on the pulse of this moment, and she almost ends up as roadkill. But she's saved by the one guy who has learned this lesson. This is how you write a female character, folks. Quit making Mary Sue Fembosses. They're boring. With Andor, we're not just here to zip from scene to scene with quick rising anxiety peppered with action and cliffhangers. And look, there's nothing wrong with that if it's done correctly, but this really isn't the show for that. You want to show the rebellion unfolding, okay? The tension here is slow burn friction between characters as they regard the events of the show as the show unfolds and how those events are shaping them. We get history on Chandrillian customs. We get the history of the people of Aldhani, the inner workings of the rebellion, how hard it must be to move millions of credits under the nose of the Empire to fund the rebellion under constant surveillance at all times. Luthen and Mon Mothma, these two forerunners of the rebellion, wearing their masks while secretly planning missions and making sacrifice. We feel like we know the Star Wars pre-A New Hope world a whole lot better. And you know the actors are absolutely loving this, because it takes them right back to their craft. Oh, I actually get to act and enter into a lively exchange with fellow actors with great dialogues and powerful monologues? The stuff I actually studied? You mean I don't have to just spit out drab, uninspiring words that simply serve a stupid plot? But I actually get to build a character so this person that I'm playing actually connects to the audience?
I'd like a return invitation. I'd like to come back here, at least once.
I'm sure that's something that can be arranged.
I have a 14-year-old son. I'd like to bring him with me.
You can't be serious.
I'm not asking for betrothal.
Then what are we talking about?
An introduction. Her daughter's 13. She'll soon come of age. Two young people, attractive and privileged Chandrillan citizens.
We will never have a better chance than this. And I would rather die trying to take them down than giving them what they want.
I've given up all chance at inner peace. I made my mind a sunless space. I share my dreams with ghosts. I wake up every day to an equation I wrote 15 years ago from which there's only one conclusion. I'm damned for what I do.
You know how many videos and articles have been written about the Kino and Luthen speeches in episode 10 alone? I have seen so many Twitter and Facebook posts on those two speeches. It's insane. So in short, Andor is a different beast for this franchise. It takes us to a place many of us wanted to go, deeper into the world of the galaxy at the time of the Empire. The characters we are introduced to have meaning. Andor himself goes on a journey that takes him from selfish scavenger to a future martyr for the cause. And it doesn't use quick rising anxiety with action and cliffhangers as its storytelling method. It absolutely could have, and it would have worked just fine, but Andor chose slow burn, deep character building, and long form storytelling. And you know, for me, that always works better. Anyway, folks, what did you think of Andor Season 1? If you saw it, let me know in the comments below. And thanks for watching. See you next time.